These are things that you really do need to consider so that you don't end up having a bit of a boo-boo on the day and so that your guest experience just isn't a bit pants. Hello lovely couples and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, wedding planner and owner of Bluebird Creative. I provide a weekly dose of wedding planning goodness for the modern couple. So if you haven't already guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And if you're not following me over on Instagram, then make sure you go and do that at Bluebird_creative, where I show you a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of the weddings that we're doing this year. In fact, I've managed to do a reel of every wedding we've done so far this year, so you can get to see what we actually do on the day, what our weddings are like, and loads of stories with just general chit chat from me. So if you fancy that, come and join me over there. But here on YouTube this week, I am breaking it down and I am giving you 6 wedding styling mistakes you really do want to avoid. So let's just jump straight into the video. Right guys, so 6 different styling tips that basically you're going to want to make sure that you don't do this wrong. Number 6 is definitely an important one, but let's start right at the beginning with the wedding ceremony. When you are styling your ceremony, actually consider how many seats you have either side of your aisle. You might think, Lauren, this isn't styling, but it is, because some couples will say, we only want 5 either side. One little piece of advice for you, my friends: if you do 5 chairs or odd numbers either side of the aisle, most of your guests are probably invited as a couple. So there's going to be split ups. They're going to come in and go, oh, well, there's 1 seat there and there's 1 seat there. Don't do it. If you can, even numbers either side. Let's move on. Number 2 styling mistake is not repurposing from your ceremony. Again, you might be thinking, how is that a mistake? Let me tell you, your wedding ceremony is likely going to be roughly 30 minutes, depending on what you have, obviously. If you are having some beautiful florals and florals down the aisle and a floral arch or posies or whatever it is that you've decided to do, if they stay there for just those 30 minutes and that is it, that makes my heart sad. Okay guys, flowers are expensive and flowers are beautiful. So let's use our budget and utilise it properly. And let's also not just waste flowers, because that's bad for the environment and just sad because they are beautiful. So that is enough reasons, if you ask me, to not make that styling mistake. When you are designing your wedding day, design the ceremony and then speak with your florist and discuss, right, how can we repurpose those items into the rest of our day? When I'm working with a client, I will move anything for the ceremony that's not attached. If it's attached, then I can't do it. And sometimes we'll have our florist stay on site so that they can detach it and move it to another part of the venue to make that look pretty for the rest of the day, so that we're really utilising that budget, utilising those flowers and not wasting flowers, because that makes me sad. And it might make you sad too. And in which case, you're going to take this tip and run with it. Let's move on to candles. Let's not make this mistake. When we are choosing candles, now don't get me wrong guys, I freaking love a candle, and there are so many cool candles out there nowadays. I use Esther and Eric candles very frequently, and those are the beautiful Swedish, really finely tapered long candles. We use those at a lot of our weddings. But I love all the funky candles that are out. You've got twisty candles, you've got like dip dye candles, you've got fat chunky candles with textures on. Oh, I just love a candle. I really, really love a candle. But you do need to bear in mind a couple of things. One of them being their burn time. Are they going to burn for at least 2 hours? Because you've got to think about how long your wedding breakfast is going to be. Second of all, you want to consider your linen. And is the candle in a candlestick where there isn't really a base? Because if the candle is going to drip and drip off and there's no base and go onto the linens, you are going to get charged for ruining the linens or the extra dry cleaning or whatever it is that they're going to do to try and get it out of the linen. So just bear that in mind, because that is a big styling mistake. A lot of venues now will ask for these glass cylinders or tubes to go over the candles, so maybe that's something that you could consider. Otherwise, can you have a base underneath the candles? Can you have a table runner, if you're not having tablecloth, underneath it that you've purchased yourself, just to ensure that the table or the tablecloth doesn't get ruined? Really do think about that. Test your candles if you want to. See how they drip when they burn and see how long they burn. Esther and Eric candles can get at least 6 hours burn time. We've timed how long it's taken to get halfway, and there's still a half a candle to go after the wedding breakfast, so those are good ones. But do definitely check that. Something else with your candles is just to be very wary of where you're placing them on the tables, particularly the wedding breakfast, particularly if you're having dried flowers. Dried flowers, candles. Just be careful. Next one, guys, is stationery. Now, this might seem really simple, but it happens. Double check the sizing of your stationery. If your stationery arrives before the wedding, you will hopefully find that you would have checked it before the actual wedding day, and it should arrive beforehand. But at a wedding recently, we bought the stationery and we were putting it into frames for our couple who provided them on the day, and the stationery was ever so slightly too big for the photo frames. So we had to hand cut each table name and every piece of signage basically that was going in a frame to make sure that it actually fitted, and it did, and they were straight and they looked fab, and she doesn't even know. But just be very wary of your sizings. You know, when you're having place names, are they big enough? Can people read them? If you are having signage and they're going on easels, are they landscape? Are they portrait? Have you got an easel that actually fits it? The amount of times that we get told that the venue has an easel and then we're putting a sign on it and it doesn't really fit and we're having to makeshift, which is fine because that's what we're there to do. But if you haven't got a coordinator, then you haven't got somebody that's got the bag of blue tack and the hooks and the Velcro and the dotty glue dot things and all the things that we've basically got in our toolkit. So just bear that in mind. You don't want to fall into that trap. Guest book table, guys. I often have couples that come up with some really creative ways for their guests to leave them messages, whether it's Polaroid cameras that are going into a book, whether they're taking Polaroid cameras and pegging them up onto pieces of string, whether their guests are writing them notes, rolling them up and putting them into a bottle. I did that one. There's loads of really fun ways that you can have your guests leave you messages, but don't assume that they know what you want them to do. So when it comes to these beautiful little styling ideas that you've got, and whether you're setting the table up really nicely, make sure you have signage. Act as if your guests are stupid. Now, I'm not saying they're stupid, and I've mentioned this in a video before, but it's the best way to make sure everybody knows what you want them to do. So make sure that there is a sign styled up on your guest book table with whatever it is that you've decided that they need to do, so that they understand what they need to do, because then you won't be disappointed, and then you're likely going to have more messages because people are going to understand and it's not going to go wrong. So bear that in mind. Signage, tell them what to do. And finally, the most important one. When you are designing your wedding breakfast table, just bear in mind the height of your table centres. Now, what you don't want to do is go for a table centre that comes up nice and high and sits here, because none of your guests are going to be able to see each other. Now, you want your guest experience to be amazing. You want your guests to walk away and have had an amazing day. You also want your guests to be able to actually talk to the person opposite them on the table. And you probably want your guests to be able to see you and your other half at your table. So bear in mind the height. Now, the likelihood is that you're working with an amazing florist who would never create something that sits there, because that would be ridiculous, but it does happen. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't have high flower arrangements, because you can 100% have high flower arrangements and it not affect your eye line at all. So you basically want to have low, or you want to have high. And usually there's a lot of people now that have these plinths that are metal plinths, and they're in kind of a square that goes, then they're nice and tall, and they'll be in gold or sometimes black, which I love, and sometimes white and sometimes silver. So basically all the metal colours, but they are empty inside. So they're not like a boxed plinth, they are a metal frame, which means your guests can see through it, and the flowers are then sat up here and they create a beautiful eye line as you look across the room. So high flowers and installations are amazing, but just bear in mind how the height is created. A few years ago, there was the martini glasses where there was really thin glass stem and then it would open up and then you would have flower arrangements up there as well. That's not really on trend as much anymore, and definitely the plinths are in. A lot of people will also use wooden planks to then join the plinths and create beautiful installations up there as well. And then you can have hanging things off it. If you haven't seen, I actually did a wedding where we created a beautiful installation like that, so I'll link that video up here for you. So that one is really important. Just bear in mind the eye line, the guest experience, because you do want them to be able to talk to each other. So there you go, my lovelies. 6 areas where you really do want to make sure that you're nailing your styling and not making these big boo-boos and big mistakes. I hope you found these tips helpful, and I will see you next week for some more wedding planning goodness.